I'm Bob Brill. He's Erik Kramer. Welcome to Kramer and Brill, an NFL fantasy football podcast. Each week, my co-host, former Bears and Lions quarterback Erik Kramer, and myself delve into your fantasy football choices and hopefully help you out on your way to victory. Find out more by going to our website, kramerandbrill.com, or on my Bob Brill YouTube channel. So recapping how we did last week. Boy, you really liked Mixon. What a day he had. And in most leagues, it was 50-plus fantasy points. 5 touchdowns. Wow. Kenneth Walker and Travis Etienne were both solid again. You liked Justin Jefferson and Jalen Waddle. You were high on both those guys. They were both strong with Tyreek Hill. Well, I like Curtis Samuel and Juju along with Christian Kirk. All were solid plays. On the quarterback side, we both like Justin Fields, you especially, and he had a field day, 4 touchdowns, 178 yards rushing. What quarterback hits 178 yards rushing? That's going back to the Greg Landry and Bobby Douglas days. Yikes. Mahomes, 446 passing. Tua, along with Geno Smith, both hot. We said to lay off Brady, and he was a pedestrian day, while both Aaron Rodgers and Josh Allen were both off. T.J. Hawkinson had a good debut with 9 catches for 70 yards in Minnesota.
How great was it, by the way, when Mixon crossed the goal line on that 5th touchdown, and he starts counting out 1, 2, 3, 4. So, to Justin Fields' point, though, been talking about him now for a few weeks, and I'm just so impressed that all of his development really has come during the season, because he started out. I mean, you couldn't get more shaky.
Oh, and it was tanking early.
I've never seen a quarterback during the season go from worst to first, and that's what he looks like to me. I didn't think it was possible. Thank God he proved me wrong, and the Bears as well. So they've been making some great moves in the front office, and they're clearly week to week defining who they do and don't need going into next year, which I think is going to be a very short-term and long-term bright future for them.
Got some injuries this week. We'll get to the guys of the Packers in a little bit. But Josh Allen has an elbow injury. It's a UCL, which is the elbow, and it is a sort of a nerve thing. So you really want to keep an eye on him because he may be out. Then we had a coaching casualty. The Colts were expecting better things, and instead of 3-5-1, they fired Coach Frank Wright, an old quarterback. Jeff Saturday is in on the interim.
And what's going to be the ripple effect over at ESPN now that they're losing their all-star center? But I think, to me, by not elevating anybody from within Reich's staff, I think that sends sort of a clear message that Robert Irsay or Jim Irsay is getting ready to clean house and have ultimately Jeff Saturday become their permanent head coach, which is kind of a slap in the face or a roundabout way of getting around that Rooney Rule. I think it's going to – Jeff Saturday, as many great things as I've heard about him, I don't know him personally, but he just seems like a great guy, very well, not just spoken, but an intelligent guy, great history, came out of nowhere. But if you leapfrog coaches on that staff that you're going to now go coach, I think winning over the players is one thing. Win over the players that you just leapfrogged out of nowhere, because his only experience in coaching is at high school. And so, not that it couldn't be a great hire eventually, but I think he's got some hurdles to overcome in the interim.
The interesting thing is, I remember Frank Reich when he was back. I believe he was backing up in the USFL. He was backing up the $41 million man who was Steve Young. And when he was playing for the LA Express, then he went into the NFL. He didn't play very much in the NFL, but he's been long time coaching. What happens to him now? Does he end up with another team, you think, or what? What's going to happen to him?
He's got to. And that's what everybody starts clamoring about. What about Jeff Saturday and how unfair is this to the coaches? And he didn't have any experience. Well, what happens to Frank Reich? And he's got a great coaching experience, and no, he's not going to be out of the game. He'll land somewhere, and whoever gets him is going to be grateful to have him.
All right, let's get right to the games. It's bye week again. This week, the teams that are on bye, last week we had 6. This week we got 4. On bye this week are the Ravens, the Patriots, the Bengals, and the Jets. Now that's going to involve a lot of key players. especially with the Ravens, the Bengals. So you're going to have to find somebody to back up if you've got players like Mixon and Burrow and Jackson and now Kenyon Drake, who had a big day. Had another big day, had 2 more touchdowns coming from out of nowhere last week. Thursday night, Falcons, Panthers. Here we go. Well, I tell you, Amazon's got to be pulling their hair out. So they get these stinko games. Panthers will start P.J. Walker at quarterback against the Falcons. I'm liking the Falcons. Tyler Algieri here, and that's it. That's it. I'm probably not even going to watch the game. That's how bad this one is.
Well, I agree. It is slim pickings here. I won't be sucked in, however, by Tyler Algieri's one good game, even though it's against Carolina's D coming up. They are playing. Even though they're playing, I don't start Algier here.
Sunday, Seahawks and Buccaneers, Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, Kenneth Walker, all good starts with Tyler Lockett. I'd stick with Fournette here for the Bucs.
I got your back on all the Seahawks you just mentioned. I'm out, though, on Fournette or any Buccaneer player for that matter.
But Tom Brady's just not – we've been saying this week to week. I know he pulled it out. He looked like the old Tom Brady on that final drive against the Rams. But, it's just I think maybe – do you think this is his last year? I think he's calling it quits.
I would hope so. He's surprised a lot of people in the past, but he's going to have zero momentum going into next year. Yeah. And I don't think, doing it for one series is not doing it for a game, and it's not doing it for a season. And so I don't think when you watch him, he just looks slow. Yeah. And the game is sort of like, and at 45, 46 years old, he should look slow.
Yeah, that's true. Vikings at Bills, it all depends on who starts for Buffalo. Josh Allen having some issues, as we mentioned. And if Case Keenum starts, I'm okay with Diggs and Davis. Buffalo D must step it up, and it will. But maybe not enough. Look for Minnesota to rebound, and I like the offensive weapons here all across the board.
Even though Minnesota only has one loss, they don't have a dominant win. So I can see them winning this in a similar fashion that they've won their other 8 games, which is by a late score. And for Minnesota, I'd add Hawkinson in there too, because it didn't take him any time to get going. And so I think Dalvin Cook is the other guy in Minnesota that had an off game last week, even though I had the 1 touchdown catch. I think he's going to get back on track with the running game.
Now we get to the Erik Kramer game, the Lions and the Bears.
All right, go ahead.
Jamal Williams, the only likable guy here for the Lions. And the Bears, you got to go with Fields, who's on fire. Komet is solid here. I'd give Claypool a shot this week. He's been there a week now. I think Fields' progression backs off Montgomery, though, just because he's running more. And I don't think Montgomery's going to get the ball as much, even though he's a good running back and should be getting some more carries. I just don't think it's going to happen.
I agree with you. Fantasy-wise, Montgomery's probably not a play this week, but nobody or everybody seems to forget about Darnell Mooney. And in Chicago, he is their most explosive weapon. Every game. And Komet now is also, to me, looking an awful lot like, while he's running routes and catching passes, a lot like Travis Kelce, right until he gets the ball in his hands. Then he turns into Derek Taylor, or Derek Henry. And so I think that you were right. Chase Claypool is a guy to consider because I think they're going to watch the game film this week too, all the Bears I'm talking about, and they can see that guy's special. And so I think you've got some options in there. And as you just mentioned, Justin Fields is, if you don't have by now, shame on you, because we've been talking about this for a few weeks now, and he is, I don't care who they're playing, an every week starter.
Jaguars and Chiefs, Etienne, a solid running back 1, and Christian Kirk is a good start here too. Chiefs are solid, but they're playing not up to par lately. So look for a rebound. So, Mahomes is playing great, don't get me wrong, but look for a real rebound across the board here. So anyone on offense here with a pullback on Edwards-Helaire, who hasn't been a big part of the offense lately.
Yeah, I love Mahomes, obviously, and the ultra weapon he's got in Travis Kelce. But now you can add Smith-Schuster, who has put 3 solid games back to back to back. And then the guy that everybody forgets about in Kansas City is McCole Hardman, who's now had 5 touchdowns, I believe, in the last 5 games.
Yeah, you keep seeing that number 17 go by. It's 17, don't it? Yeah.
So, yeah.
Browns and Dolphins getting close to Deshaun Watson time. So I kind of like Brissett in a shootout this week. With Tua on fire, I like both offenses here this week, and that means everybody.
Well, for the Browns, I'd lay off Brissett. I'd go with the rest of Amari Cooper, and of course Nick Chubb. The Dolphins' O is a juggernaut, and they just keep adding to it. So now Hill goes off. He's a first receiver to 1,000 yards in NFL history. You got Waddle, and Tua now is playing out of his mind and consistently well. But then I'd add a guy named Jeff Wilson to your thought process, because they just picked him up at the trade deadline, and on 9 carries had over 50 yards rushing, and then scored in the red zone. So he's now become, he's not so slow, I should say. This guy's wicked fast. And so another weapon, again, to an already stellar unit. So you got some options there on the Dolphins, especially offensively.
Yeah, Wilson's been interesting. Over the years, we've kind of liked him when he was at the Niners. Some games didn't like him, others, and then he gets traded. Now it's like he's the RB1. I mean, he was the RB1 in San Francisco, but now he really is an RB1 there. Texans and Giants, no on the Texans except for Dameon Pierce, who is a beast. Start him. Giants coming off a bye with several players out, but you can count on at least Barkley and possibly Jones.
I agree. After crawling into a cocoon for a week, Pierce has come back with a vengeance against the Eagles. I think all fantasy GMs, of course, are going to be starting Barkley, no matter who they're playing. And then, as you mentioned, with a couple of good fantasy quarterbacks in Burrow and Lamar having buys this week, Daniel Jones has crept into the conversation about as an option because of what he gives you, like Justin Fields. Not just passing the ball, making good decisions, but what he also gives you in the running game. This guy's scoring touchdowns from 30, 40 yards out.
Saints, Steelers, they're in Pittsburgh. No one on the Saints after the Monday night performance. Steelers are going to do some revamping after the bye week. So look for Freiermuth and Johnson to have big days. I like Warren here at running back over Najee Harris. If you have Warren, or if you can pick him up, I would start him at least as a flex, because I think he's going to get more opportunities earlier in the rotation. So if you have no other choices of guys who would start, I would definitely pick up Warren and put him in there.
Well, I'll say, I know you're the Steelers expert, but here's my opinion looking on the outside. When the Steelers rework their offensive line in the offseason, and when Kenny Pickett gets a real offseason as the starter, then next year they're going to have some options. This year, though, I think they're slim, and I'd stay away from them. Chris Olave, though, for the Saints, now that Andy Dalton's back in, he's getting punished, but the guy's making great decisions. And the guy he settled on as the guy is Chris Olave, who runs great routes, tough, knows how to get open. Kamara, though, is really disappointed, I think, a lot of folks this year in his lack of production of consistently. So I think I'd stay away from Kamara, but play Olave.
Broncos at Titans. Broncos coming off a bye. You can count on Jerry Jeudy here and Derrick Henry for Tennessee. Outside of that, I wouldn't kind of go with anybody on these two teams.
That's a pretty short list. I'm going to cut it in half even. So I'm going to say no on Jerry Jeudy. But I think when it comes to Derrick Henry, he's another one of those guys. I don't care who he's playing. He's going to be probably punching a couple people in the mouth across the goal line, scoring at least once or twice there, well over 100 yards. And he's a guy that can explode. So if you've got him, you're obviously playing him. And again, I don't care who the defense is.
Colts at Raiders. Colts in disarray, and a new coach doesn't guarantee a win or happiness. I still like Pittman, and with Taylor being out, you really should, consider Deion Jackson, at least as a flex. Raiders have Devontae Adams, who's solid, along with Josh Jacobs. Carr is inconsistent, but seems to be playing well at the moment. And I stress that, at the moment.
Well, I'm going to be at this game. And so I wonder if Jeff Saturday, that is going to start himself insert himself into the starting lineup at center. I'd be afraid to start any. What's that?
You'll have to pick up that offensive line.
Right. Well, I'd be afraid to start any Colt in this game. When they fire their coach and replace him with Jeff Saturday, again, his only coaching gig's been in high school, and that was at Hebron Christian Academy. I just hope the team buses all arrive at the stadium on time. For Vegas, their only consistent performer this year has been Devontae Adams.
Cowboys at Packers. Cowboys coming off a bye, so go with Dak, and you should. Both running backs are good to go. I like Elliott and Pollard here. I usually don't like the split back situation, but they're both doing well enough. CeeDee Lamb is always a good shot at wideout for the Packers. Dobbs and Jones are both sporting injuries, so keep an eye on them. And it looks like those injuries may be enough to keep them out. I actually like Rodgers here because with Jones possibly out, I believe they're going to be playing from behind, and that means passing volume. And despite the interceptions and the sacks, there's going to be volume here, and I like that. And that's why I would, for the first time this year, put Aaron Rodgers in my starting lineup if I had him.
Wait a minute. From the guy who all year long has talked about either sit or trade Rodgers, has now got the entire NFL talking that way, and now you're switching to say
just one game. Well, you got to see who's out there. I really, they're going to get killed. I really do think that Dallas is going to maul them, but I think that because of that, playing from behind, pass, and that means volume, and that means points.
I finally gotten around to agreeing with what you said all year, and that not only the Packers, or not only Rodgers, but the entire Packers, as an organization, has basically fallen off the 10th floor window.
Yeah.
And they're in free fall. So I think the Cowboys have finally figured out they're not secret to success, but what everybody now sees, which is their strength, which is their defense and their running game. And that's why both running backs, even though there's two, are both solid plays. And especially Pollard, because as we've seen, this guy can go off. And the other guy I'd consider playing is a guy who, just coming back from injury himself, Dalton Schultz, has now started to expand his role.
Yes. Cardinals and Rams. Kyler Murray is the key here. I like him against the Rams, and the only Ram I like is Cooper Kupp.
Last week, you said Rondale Moore would have a good game, and he finished as the Cards' leading receiver, 8 catches, 69 yards. I'd consider not only starting him, but I'd for sure start DeAndre Hopkins. He only had 36 yards, and that was against Seattle, but he did get into the end zone. And as the Rams are sliding away down the tubes this season, I don't even think Cooper Kupp's a play here.
I hate the fact that they're losing because I can't sell my Rams tickets.
There's always in it, or should be something in it.
Oh man, I tell you, it's like pulling teeth. Chargers at Niners. Chargers should be playing better than they are, so I like Eckler and Herbert, but that's about it. I also like Josh Palmer, wide receiver, I should say that. He's been coming on. I mean, he really looks good. I think he's one of those guys that is going to be sort of a Renfro type guy. I think he's going to be in there. Niners coming off a bye. I think you start anyone you have here.
Well, especially if you have Christian McCaffrey, because he's the guy who runs it, catches it, and now throws it. So if you're looking for points, which everybody in fantasy football is, he is definite start. And then for the Chargers, like you, I like Palmer, because lately it's really just been Herbert and Eckler with all the receivers they've had down. But now Palmer caught a big pass on the last game-winning drive. He went over 100 yards, and I think he is the guy on the outside. And so I think you're going to see, now that Herbert's getting healthier from that rib injury, Palmer's going to be the guy receiving.
Monday night, Commanders and Eagles. Eagles all over this one. Start them all. And the Commanders, I wouldn't start anyone. I'd even lay off McLaurin this week.
Hey, this could be the Commanders' win right here.
Really?
The Eagles obviously are 8-0, but they're coming off a Texas game where they won but got staggered a little bit.
Right.
Washington went toe-to-toe with the one-loss Vikings. And so I like McLaurin here. For Philly, it's Miles Sanders, who's quietly had a productive season running the ball, and he's got 5 touchdowns in the last 5 games.
Wow, the Eagles going to lose, huh? Well, wait and see. There you have
what I said.
Another edition of Kramer and Brill. Find out more by going to our website, kramerandbrill.com, or on my Bob Brill YouTube channel. For my friend and colleague, Erik Kramer, I'm Bob Brill. We'll see you next time.